Yo, this is Postman. I'm back from a hiatus and I decided to revive this channel back again since I released new music. My music is often inspired by games, series, lore, and other nerdy shit. And the same is true for my newest EP/album on Billegal Beats called Overly Elaborate Track Titles. So, welcome to the channel and let's dive in. The first track I'd like to walk through with you is a Water Enchantress performing the Rite of Aramesir. The EP is inspired by my experiences with the Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, the most popular way to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Online, I think. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has become quite a complex game, quite renowned for the long texts, like, for example, in Chaos Emperor, the Dragon of Armageddon, in the Mayan, the Mighty Master of Magic, or Black Garden. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is also renowned for cards with absurdly long names, like Number 81, Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Super Dora, Blackluster Soldier Envoy of the Evening Twilight, and wait for it, Showdown of the Secret Sense Scroll Techniques. Try to say that again 3 times. Okay, so in Yu-Gi-Oh! You have like kinda archetypes, cards that all synergize together, work well together. And I decided to make a track for each of these archetypes that I like. One for each attribute, and one extra for spells, and one extra for trap cards. This track, which is inspired by the Water Enchantress, or more broadly the Brave Adventurer archetype, is the Water attribute track. The whole archetype is based or inspired by JRPGs or tactical RPGs in which you have different party members with different skill sets and so on. And to me, the archetype also has these kinda like anime isekai vibes. Sonically, the idea for the track was, of course, to have it sound watery, but not too literally. So to kind of try to make some sounds sound like they have a watery quality, I used spectral processing and made use of metallic textures and reverb. Also, somewhere in making the track, it had like these really Koan Sound-esque vibes, so I just went with that. Instead of giving you a full walkthrough of the track and going into the nitty-gritty of each element of the track, I think it would be better to just pick out some highlights of the track instead of going through the full track and try to condense the important or the interesting parts of the track. So, this track actually started with this sample. It's from a Solar Punk sample pack on Loopmasters. I imported it in Regroover Pro, plugin that splices loops or samples into different stems or parts. It's of course some AI magic going on. So I drop it in, it analyzes it and splits it to what I think are different parts or different elements. It's a trick I use quite often. And then I selected some layers, which you can see here. This one, which is more the bassy sound, and this one, which is more the fluttery pad-like thing. And I processed them differently over the whole track. I chopped them up, put some reverb on them, and so on. This sample also defined the key of the track, which is D sharp minor, but when I decided to go the Cohen sound more funk-ish kind of way, I decided to mainly use the D minor pentatonic scale instead of the full D minor scale, just to funk it up some more. On the percussion side of things, I decided to go full on with the spectral processing, the watery sounds, and so on. And of course, I used some, just some wet sounds or watery sounds like this one, pitched up with echo and so on. But I also processed some other samples with spectral plugins to give them like a watery texture, just like this one, this snare track. And I did that with Abberant DSP Digitalis. Look at a nice cat. It's a lo-fi / audio degrading kind of plugin, but it has also spectral processing and a buffering repeater effect. So here, apparently I use it as a kind of repeater, but in other tracks I use it to spectral process the incoming audio. Some of the loops and tops are also processed with auto panning, beat repeat, just again to give it more an IDM stuttery feel, just to let the track groove and pulse on. Then on top of it all, almost all tracks are quite heavily compressed, especially the snare, which is like compressed with saturation and like a whole bunch of OTT next to each other, and that's with the purpose of bringing out the artifacts, bringing out the snippets of reverbs to give it a metallic shine and let it punch more through the mix. As I've mentioned before, I went for a Cohen sound-esque vibe, and that's mainly because I started digging for some fitting bass samples and the key of the track, and I found some Cohen sound samples on Splice, and it just fitted, and I decided to just use them. Of course, I didn't want to just rip off Cohen sound and try to make the basses my own by letting them go through different effects and so on. So I used Disperser, again Digitalis for spectral processing. On the main bus, it's going through a whole lot of OTTs. This OTT is quite special. It's different from the regular OTT. It splits the incoming audio into different bands by using phase cancellation with EQ3. That way, it cleanly separates the different frequency bands, which gives it the capacity to more cleanly overcompress the sound. I also imported a whole long Cohen sound noise rees to sampler and made my own riff with it. Pitched up some samples, spliced them, beat repeated them, and so on, just to really make them my own. There also is a bass in the intro and the outro, which sounds like this. And this bass follows a polymeter pattern, so it repeats its 6th quarter note instead of repeating on the 4th quarter note, just to give it a more interesting feel. Later on in the outro of the track, it's also vocoded by the fluttery pads from the intro, just to give it a more chord-like quality. To top it all off, to give the track more melodic content, I found this ARP, which I processed with delay and stuttering effects done in the clip editor. I converted the ARP into MIDI and tweaked it to my liking. I put it through some arpeggiators, some scale utilities, and used that MIDI for different instruments. I also used it to derive some chords or other riffs from it. So that's about it for this track. I hope it was insightful to you. If you care, comment down below if you prefer me doing highlights or just walking through the whole damn thing. Thank you for watching. I especially want to thank Billegal Beats for making the release of this EP possible, and I hope I'll catch you next time.